Good afternoon. Please can I welcome everybody to this meeting of Cabinet Member for Housing Decision Day taking place from the Wharton Suite, Winchester Guildhall. Time is 2 p.m. My name is Councillor Chris Westwood, Chairperson and Cabinet Member for Housing. The meeting is being live streamed and recorded to the Council's YouTube channel. Subtitles are available and advice on how to turn this on is set out on our website. Please can everyone ensure their mobile phones are on silent or switched off. In the unlikely event it's necessary to evacuate the building, the fire alarm will sound. Please follow the instructions given to you by a team. Please can I welcome members of the public and visiting councillors to the meeting. I'll invite you forward when it's time for you to make your contribution. So turning to the agenda, public participation. I have Mr. Adamson who would like to speak on item 4. I'll call you up in a second for item 4. Okay. Visiting councillors, I have Councillor Horrell who would like to speak on item 5, and Councillor Horrell, I presume you'd like to speak at the item. Okay, that's fantastic, thank you. So moving swiftly on to item 4, petition regarding proposed community garden in Winnell and bin storage arrangements for 69 to 163 Firmstone Road, Winchester. So Mr. Adamson, would you like to join us at the table to start with? And I'll just do before you turn that on, I'll just do a quick introduction. So a petition has been received to create a community garden on housing land in Firmstone Road, Winnell, Winchester, for the wider Winnell community to be able to grow food and for the space to act as a meeting place for residents to socialise. The land is located between 2 garage sites and is currently open space and not used for any particular purpose. So, Mr. Adamson, you want to speak on the matter. Can I just, first of all, before we start, you did provide us with quite a lengthy email, probably at lunchtime today, which we have not had time to fully consider. There's considerable amount of information in there. And it would be good if you could cover your contents as you go through and speak to us. So at that point, if you're ready, I'll turn over to you, and you have 3 minutes in which to.
Okay, what is this garden? What we want to develop at that place? In order for develop that one, we submit Firmstone project proposal on 8 December 2023, and council only recognize that one only after 10 months. What's going on? Okay, I read that report prepared by Fiona Charcher. She provides lots of irrelevant information about constituent group, about agreement. No, in first place, we're going for consultations with the people of these blocks of flats. Do they want this garden on that plot of land or not? I have created exact questionnaire for that will be used in a consultations ballot where people will choose. Do they want community green space at Winnell garden, which is Firmstone project proposal, or they want other options? This is a unique opportunity for a council because I insert other option as other. If the council, for instance, want to sell this land to a state market, to open market, the council can put their amendments that, okay, instead of other, it will be selling of that land. Okay, but you will read a lot of legal stuff in that lengthy document. Main stuff is the bins. Bins was taken away from these 8 blocks of flats without any consultation. And Fiona Charger admits that one in her report, that there was no any consultations. But what you are doing, you taking away bins, even didn't have any consultations. Why you did that? You have a statutory council has a statutory obligations. When your decisions it's impacting a lots of people, you have to conduct the consultations. And this is exactly what petition asks for. Consultations on a community garden. If people want it be developed there, they will wait for it. If they don't want, council can offer their own proposal for this plot of land, and it will be inserted in that ballot for consultations. If people of these blocks of flats want return of their small bins back to where they were before 26 February 2024, they will, if the majority will vote for it, council have to return the bins free of charge. Okay, council actually providing inaccurate information that this is the permanent change in the bin storage. No, it's interim measure. Even this interim measure, and it cannot be permanent. Therefore, the option return on individual bins are on the table and must be included in consultations. This is exactly what democracy was developed for. Finish.
Thank you very much. Thank you. You return to your seat if you may. You want to return to your seat at the back? Thank you. So thank you, Mr. Adamson. So just picking up on your points. The first thing, you're passionate about having a community garden there. I can see that, and so am I. I want to see our open spaces near our properties, near our homes, used by the tenants and by the wider community. So I'm supportive of any scheme that will allow us better use of the land that we own around our homes. So, that's my position, and that is the council's position, that we fully support use of land in that manner, but it has to be used in the right way. You submitted the plan for the garden in December 2023, and you were saying it's 10 months. In that 10 months, then I am aware that this has been subject of various correspondence, emails and discussions with yourself, between the officers and yourself, on that project. You also, within that, the plan that you put forward, you put costed items to actually get the ground into the state, and then to actually develop the ground and the facilities that you want on that ground as well. And there was a sum against it. As I understand it, you were looking for this to be an estates improvement proposal and project, and I believe the officers clearly told you that that could not be done as an estates improvement proposal to create the community garden and funded through the HRA budget, and that the right way forward for this would be for a community scheme to be created to actually develop that site as a garden, and then there would be support from the council to help create that scheme, and support from the council to apply for funding to fund that scheme as well. You've got your hand up. I can't bring you back to the table to speak. I apologise for that. You then asked, so over the last 10 months, there has been considerable discussion with you from the officers on your initial proposal. You then asked, do we want the garden or not, or is there other options? I've already said that my personal position and the position of this council is that we want to see the use of the land around our homes for the best use for the tenants and residents in those homes and the wider community. At this time, there is no thought of selling that land, right? And I and this team are fully supportive of creating a community facility on that green space near those 4 blocks of flats. You then moved on to talk about the bins taken away with no consultation. It's my understanding that there was consultation initially when the bins were repositioned. They were repositioned for safety reasons for the operatives that are emptying those bins, and we have to be mindful of our contractors' safety as well as our tenants' safety. So there was consultation on those bins at that time. And you then went on to talk about consultation on the community garden, and again consultation on the bins. So there is consultation ongoing at present with the residents in the 4 blocks of flats as to the position of those bins. Every resident has been contacted and has had a month in which to reply back to us, and they've been given 5 different options, and we've indicated the preferred option. Apologise, I can't bring you back to speak. I keep seeing your hand. So I can assure you that the residents of those blocks are being consulted on the location and the collection of those bins. And I've also checked that the bin locations as they currently are, and as we are proposing to the residents as our preferred option, do not occupy the same space as the community garden that you are talking about. So the 2 issues are distinctly separate. Right? One will not impinge on the other. So that consultation on the bins is taking place. To move forwards with this project, I would urge you to embrace what we're saying about forming a community partnership in the Winnell area. That's a community garden space with community group. And as a council, we will help create and set up that community group. We will help address the funding issues and support you in terms of getting grants for the work that's needed to be done. And we will work with our partner organisations and charities who are also offering help to help establish that garden and make a success of it. So can I just ask, so I think I've answered your questions there. You would not like the answer.
All that legal stuff we treated to you. Address all that.
Can I just say, I've heard you. I can't allow you to interrupt the meeting from the back. You've had your say. I apologise. I do have a few questions for the officers. Should we be mindful to move forwards with the recommendations that are in the report today, then what would a consultation process look like with the local community in terms of getting the group together and getting and helping them set up a community scheme in that area for a community garden?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah. Initially, I think the problem is getting the level of interest from the community in forming a community group. So we're currently working on that. We're reaching out to all sorts of local organisations to see whether there's interest from the organisations themselves to get involved in the group, and in terms of any of their members to get involved in a group and establish a new group. And we will reach out further to residents from the Winnell community to see whether, again, there's any interest from local residents to get involved. At this stage and in previous months, we've just not had that level of interest shown to date, but it doesn't mean that we won't stop trying.
Okay, thank you. And should you be successful in creating a interest in a community group and moving it forwards into a fully functional community group, how could the council help with setup costs, and how could the council help that group with ongoing costs?
So in terms of just setting up the group, I'm happy to sort of provide some of my time and indeed we've already provided things like templates, terms of reference that they could use as a basis for any constitution that they want to pull together as a group. In terms of funding, there's the grants through the City Council, of course, that they can apply for to look at for setting up costs. And we can also look at wider grant-making trusts and organisations to see what funding is available, from those sources, not only to help with the setup costs of the organisations, but also with the ongoing sort of developments of the garden itself.
Okay, thank you. And do we have experience of similar groups being set up in other locations within the city area, for a start?
Not exactly the same, but certainly some similar groups that do exist. There's the Stanmore Gardening Group that operate out of the Carroll Centre. They basically work with raised beds in and around the Carroll Centre. And I believe, talking to officers in our NERD team, there are also other sort of examples of groups that have been developed, like Friends of St Giles Hill, I think, are a group that that the NERD team have supported as well.
Okay, thank you. So if we were to, mindful to accept the recommendations of the report today, establish a community group to get that. Could you please not interrupt? Thank you. To establishing a community group in Winnell with the intention of creating and setting up a community garden in that space would enable us as a council to support them in terms of the creation of that group, in terms of helping them set the proposal up, with helping them apply for grants. There may be some council grants that will be available to help them set up costs, further other grants for community grants for ongoing costs. We could help through bringing in charitable organisations that we work with and know of, who have also offered to help, such as Edible Winchester, I think, is interested in supporting this scheme. And that would be the method and the route forwards for getting this scheme off the ground and providing the community facility that I would like to see in that space, and I think we would all like to see. Could I ask you one more time, please, not to shout from the back? Thank you. Thank you for your help for that. So, Mr. Adamson, I thank you for your input today, which I've listened to and I've responded to. I have read all of the correspondence that you sent in the last 12 months and understood it. I have not read the 4 pages that you sent, but we will look at those 4 pages. And after this meeting, we have not had the time to look through these and digest those. I also have to take into consideration the advice and views of the officers when making a decision, and certainly making a decision on land that is owned by housing, which is housing. I will ask for, please, final time, don't interrupt. I fully support the use of this land as a community garden, but I also have to take into account the requirements for management of housing assets. So your petition covers 2 points. I will talk about the bins first. To consult with the residents of the flats with regard to the arrangements for the bin stores. This consultation is currently taking place.
It doesn't matter. It's not consultation. Consultation is a 4.1 clause, DI 6.
Secondly, Mr. Adamson, I will have to ask you to leave if you continue interrupting. Thank you. Second point in your petition is to reconcile the Firmstone project proposal of the 8th of December 2023. With regard to the Firmstone project, as this is a community project with the intention of the community taking responsibility for the site, it does not meet the requirements to be considered as an estate improvement and funded from the HRA.
It is me. You have to read that piece of paper.
So my decision is therefore to support the officer's recommendations as laid out in the recommendations section of the published paper, which is firstly to agree in principle the proposal to create a community garden in Winnell subject to a legal agreement and the required permissions. Secondly, to agree the establishment of a constituted community group subject to point 1, via the Housing and Communities team to manage the land as a growing space and as a space for residents to socialise in. And thirdly, to agree that the council enters into the appropriate legal arrangements with the community group to permit them to manage the land subject to points 1 and 2 being agreed as set out. So that is my decision on this paper. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Adams. We've finished that point on the agenda, and thank you. Moving on to item 5, which is the shared ownership sales policy. Councillor, I'll do a short introduction and then I'll invite you up to speak. So Homes England have changed their guidance and required each provider to produce its own customer-focused guidance that, amongst other things, requires providers to allocate homes on a first-come, first-served basis and include a requirement for a minimum surplus income. In terms of consultation, we have contacted other providers, discussed with housing colleagues, reviewed the approaches others are taking, and discussed with the independent mortgage advisor we referred to in order to make sure nothing was compromising the ability to obtain a mortgage. Additionally, we consulted with those who've expressed an interest in shared ownership homes directly, both to the New Hams team and through Hampshire Home Choice. The main change from the current policy relate to minimum surplus income. In addition, updated wording and the information provided in the links makes things clearer for potential purchasers. You'd like to come up? Thank you. And you know the drill.
Chair, thank you for allowing me to address your decision day meeting today. And as you know, I think shared ownership is an important part of the housing offer. So I'm not in any way questioning that. It's clearly an important tenure in our offering. However, I do have a number of questions regarding DD 79, and I would be grateful if they could be clarified by you or the officers this afternoon. And I understand the rationale, as you just articulated, for putting forward the changes to the current policy. But when I compared the new versus the old, there were a number of differences that I didn't quite understand. And I wondered if you might help with that. Who were the other providers we consulted with who were mentioned in paragraph 4.2? Just some examples would be helpful. Do we feel the 4 resident responses from the 294 residents who expressed an interest in shared ownership, again in section 4.2, is a real claim to consultation? We might have asked, but we clearly didn't have a substantial response. I read the risk assessment, Chair, and the content and the repetitive nature of that. And I'm afraid I didn't really take from that a full understanding of the mitigation and particularly in that risk assessment. Comparing new versus old, we did have a reservation fee in the old policy. Now, that may be deliberate. I appreciate it's now on a first come, first served basis, but certainly a fee shows commitment. And obviously, there are various processes you have to go through to actually secure your place in the queue, as it were. So that would be good to understand why that isn't in the new policy. Also in the previous policy, there were several sections about appeals, review periods, for example, safeguarding, some important, more generic pieces, not necessarily entirely specific to this particular policy, but important ways that we do business as a council. And I didn't see those in the revised policy, and I'd be grateful to understand whether that's a deliberate step to not have those in. If I were an applicant and I didn't have a successful application, what is my process for appeal? How do I challenge that, if at all, as we go forward? So, Chair, I'd be grateful for some of those elements to be clarified. Thank you.
Can I just clarify the fourth one again? So it was after risk assessment and before the appeals.
The reservation fee, which was in the original policy. Now, I appreciate this policy is about first come, first served, but you still have hurdles to go through to actually be successful. And obviously a fee shows some level of commitment. We may have decided that's not appropriate in the revision, but it would just be good to understand that, because that is a quite significant departure. Thank you.
Thank you. I am going to turn to the officers for some support on some of those answers, unsurprisingly. So, Mr. Max, or
thank you. I'll try and answer the questions. I may look to Kate for some of the detail. On the consultations, first of all, we spoke to a traditional RP, so Vivid, one of the bigger providers in the south of the country. We also went to Farnham Borough Council as well to try and get comparable with the local authority. And importantly, we also talked to an independent financial advisor that we use, and he works across a number of other providers. And that's particularly important when it comes to some of the detailed financial reasons for the policy. In terms of risk assessment, don't want to point out particular things, but I think that what I tried to convey is that there's some very simple reasons why this policy has been kept as straightforward as possible. They're about making sure that the product that is offered is simple for lenders to understand. If we do something that's too far off piste, then they won't lend, or they'll lend at a punitive rate. And to make sure the council itself isn't exposed to too much financial risk. If we put too many restrictions on sale, it's going to take us longer to sell. It's first of all, if the scheme is built, exposed to financial risk, but secondly, at development appraisal stage, if we have to factor in longer for properties to sell, then it's less likely it will pass, a particular scheme will pass those viability tests. So that's the reasons for that. In terms of reservation fee, there's still a reservation fee. You're absolutely right. There needs to be a commitment to sell. There's no reason at all we can't put that into this particular policy document, put a sentence in there. It's elsewhere on the website. This is part of a suite of documents that goes on the website that try to demystify things for potential applicants. And finally, with regard to an appeals process, there's a complaint process, and an applicant can use, or potential applicant can use the complaints process, go through stage 1, stage 2 appeals. Everything we do is carefully documented in terms of when people come to us, when people come through the right documentation and pass that and pass that assessment criteria. We'll also keep names of people who are perhaps waiting in the wings. So if somebody doesn't pass that qualification criteria, we can go straight to that person on the list. It's in our interest to sell things as quickly as possible, but individuals will be able to use the council complaints process.
Okay, so Councillor Hall, has that answered your questions? Partly, I know you're going to say.
Well, I understand that. I'm just surprised that some of those more important elements like data protection appeals are not sort of written into the policy. They are important ways of doing business, and I would have thought if I were an applicant, it would be really helpful to understand that. You know, we haven't got a review date for the policy. Some of those things I think are just, you know, good management for us about the how we do business rather than the detail of the actual formal process. So some of those things seem to have fallen off the end, and maybe, Chair, it would be helpful to have that clarity. Certainly if I were picking up the policy as a newcomer, to see all that in, you know, one document, but there may be reasons why that has been the case. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a question, Mr. Max. So the policies here, and any applicant for shared ownership will not read this policy. Do we have simplified versions of this that people can pick up, the glossy version in straight English, that people, and if we don't, would it be a good addition around this policy, just to bring out some of the points?
Yes, we do. We have a virtual glossy version that demystifies things, but the paper itself is 2 or 3 sides of A4. We try to make as plain English as possible. We've got a team, Kate and a colleague, who are at the end of a phone, end of an email, who can talk people through this is a new thing for many people, first time into the market, and it'll be things that often their parents wanted in the past, going to a shared ownership market, and so it's important we actually get face-to-face or phones or voice-to-voice support for those those people. And just on things like GDPR, absolutely important. Things like privacy notices, when people sign up to our register, they'll be issued as part of that. But we can certainly review the topping and tailing of the things that Councillor Harold talks about as well.
I think that would be useful if we were to do that. Thank you. Mr. Hendy, do I need to make any change to the recommendation to allow that to happen?
You could, Chair, if you wanted to ask for the policy to be reviewed in a year's time on the basis of experience. If you wanted to move that might be helpful.
And in terms of any supporting documentation that we may have that is more customer facing than the policy, can I assume that that will be reviewed in line with this policy, what has been?
I'm sure any review of the policy, then the review of information on the website will follow whatever the policy is saying. So if there's any changes, they need to follow up on that.
Yeah, yes, certainly, Chair. And we've already looked at that this year. It's just worth pointing out as well, this is maybe 10%, 20% of the overall supply of shared ownership properties in the district. Around 600 RP properties have been provided over the last 3 years. And part of the upgrade to the website in the early part of this year was signposting applicants to other providers as well. So there's transparency and opportunity across all those providers that are operating in the district. I think that serves the customer well.
Okay, thank you. So I think that'll be picked up as business as usual, to be perfectly honest, in terms of how we present this to the outside world. Mr. Hendy, I'd like to add on that review in a year's time, because we are changing the policy. So if you've got some specific wording you would like to see on there, or recommend we see on here, and my recommendations.
Yes, Chair, you might just want to suggest that the policy is reviewed on an annual basis, which I think is good practice anyway, and I don't think will cause officers any difficulty in doing that.
Okay, thank you. So in conclusion then, in terms of the recommendations, then my decision is that the shared ownership policy is adopted. And secondly, the second recommendation, which will of course changes to the documentation in front of me, I'm sure, is that the policy should be reviewed on an annual basis based on experience. Thank you. So with that, I'll close the meeting. Thank you.